From Beggar to Millionaire, the inspiring journey of a black man. Marcello stood on the edge of the bustling city street, rain slicking the pavement beneath his polished shoes. Once, this city had been his playground, bright lights, endless possibilities. Now, it felt like a cage, suffocating and cruel. His phone buzzed again, but the screen was empty. Isabella wasn't answering. His little girl, just 7, vanished like smoke in the wind. The silver necklace dangling from his neck, the same one he had given her on her last birthday, felt unbearably heavy. No one knew the story beneath his tailored suits. Marcello used to be a street kid, desperate and hungry, scraping by on scraps, the city's dark corners as familiar as the back of his hand. He clawed his way up, brick by brick, to become the millionaire CEO everyone envied. But tonight, all that glitter meant nothing. The vibrant buzz of the city lights turned ominous, the crowd melting into shadows as fear sank in his chest, tight and icy. Hours dragged by. Police showed little interest, distracted by their own chaos. He felt invisible. But then, in an alley drenched with neon and garbage, a face caught his eye. A skinny boy. Clothes torn and dirty, eyes wide and haunted. Around the boy's neck hung a silver necklace, his daughter's necklace, unmistakable. "Isabella?" Marcello whispered, heart pounding like a drum. The boy blinked, hesitant but steady. "I saw her, near the warehouse by the docks. She was scared." His voice was raw, trembling with something both fierce and fragile. Marcello didn't hesitate. He grabbed the boy's arm and dashed through the dark streets, pulsing with distant sirens and shouting. They burst into the empty warehouse, dust thick in the stale air, beams of moonlight cutting through cracks above. And there she was, Isabella, curled in a corner, eyes wide but safe. Relief flooded Marcello's veins, crashing through the fear like fire. But the joy was sharp and sudden. The warehouse wasn't just a hideout, it was a trap. Hidden papers lay scattered, revealing corruption tied directly to Marcello's company. His trusted driver, Alan, who always smiled too coldly, was named in dark plots of money, theft, and betrayal. Before Marcello could breathe, officers stormed in, flashing badges and accusations. Embezzlement. His name dragged through mud. His world spun into chaos. His enemy inside his home and his company attacking from all sides. Alan grinned cruelly, enjoying the wreckage he caused. The boy, David, somehow stood beside Marcello, his presence a steady light amid the storm. Shortly after, Kyle, a tech wizard with quick fingers and sharper instincts, joined their fight. Together, they hacked, recorded, and cornered the truth. Alan's voice cracked on tape, confessing lies born from greed and fear. But every time they stepped closer to freedom, shadows stretched longer. The city seemed to twist against them, secrets deeper than they ever imagined. Then, just when victory whispered close, a jarring twist shattered the fragile plan. Someone leaked their evidence. Doors slammed. Phones rang with threats. The question hung in the cold air. Could Marcello and his ragtag allies pull back from the edge before everything burned down? Or was the darkness swallowing them whole? "Hey, Before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. A lot of subscribers have reported that YouTube removed their subscriptions without warning. Just take a quick look at that red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I don't want you to miss any of the exclusive content coming your way. And while you're here, hit that like button. It did not miss. Helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, what city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's interact. They stood there, heartbeats drumming like thunder in their chests, fear clawing at their throats. Officers swarmed, accusations throwing heavy shadows over Marcello's dreams. Alan's smile twisted in a cruel mockery of victory. It felt like the ground was crumbling beneath them, but the trio had come too far to back down now. Kyle's fingers trembled over his phone, determined to hunt for the leak. "We'll find out who's behind this," he promised, eyes blazing. Marcello nodded, desperation fueling his resolve. They needed to expose the truth. There was no turning back. As the warehouse door burst open again, an officer stumbled through, yelling something about imminent danger. Panic sliced through the air. "Get out! Get out now!" They didn't question it. Instinct kicked in. They moved as one, rushing toward the exit, just as gunfire rang out. The chaotic bursts of sound echoed, shattering the tense atmosphere. Time slowed. Marcello grabbed Isabella, holding her tight against him, every instinct screaming to protect. But as they dashed toward the dim light of freedom, chaos erupted. They jolted to a stop, skidding on the concrete. At the center of it all stood a figure shrouded in shadows. A chilling familiarity sank in Marcello's gut. It was Alan again, but this time he wasn't alone. A man emerged from the darkness, dressed in a sharp, tailored suit, features sharp and defined. Marcello's breath hitched. "Brian?" he croaked, eyes widening in disbelief. Brian, his long-lost brother, the one who had vanished from their lives years ago after a family feud, a rift so deep it had torn them apart. Anger and confusion surged. Marcello had searched for him, grieved for him, and here he was, surrounded by men with guns, a malicious grin on his face. "It's been a while, brother. Too long." Brian's voice dripped with mockery. The glee in his tone didn't match the gravity of the situation. "You really thought you could rise without me? What have you done?" Marcello demanded, weighing the clash of family and betrayal. Brian's laughter echoed, cutting through Marcello's resolve, slicing open old wounds. "This is your moment, Marcello. I've been pulling strings all along. You think Alan is the enemy? No, he's just a pawn. Checkmate's all yours." In that instant, nothing felt real. Everything Marcello had built, every brick he had laid, was suddenly undermined by a brother's betrayal. Tension crackled like electricity. David, sensing the heartbeat of fear, murmured, "He's lying, right?" His fragile hope struck a chord in Marcello. He wanted to believe it, but the laughter, filled with darkness, cut deeper than any blade. Then, in a flash, chaos erupted. The officers, once there to protect, now shifted their attention. The tables had turned, and the once innocent alley became a battlefield. Gunfire erupted again, bullets flying like angry wasps. "Run!" Marcello yelled, pushing Isabella away from danger. The three of them stumbled backward, searching for a way out, breaths coming short and fast. But as they spiraled into the fray, panic gripped Marcello's heart. Trust, once given easily, crumbled as he faced his brother. "You set me up," Brian laughed, a broken sound. "I'm just making sure we play the right game, brother. Welcome to my world." The truth crashed like a tidal wave. Nothing was as it seemed. Lines blurred between loyalties. Hearts raced as they darted through the smoke and chaos. The stakes were higher now. There was a new enemy, one born from blood. As Marcello prepared for what lay ahead, one thought lingered, heavy and bitter. Who else among them might be hiding their true intentions? And where would the path lead, with a brother as the puppet master pulling the strings? The gunfire cracked like thunder, drowning out the chaos around them. Marcello pushed Isabella to the side, instinct pulling her behind him. Panic surged as brother faced brother, each heartbeat a countdown to the unknown. "What are you playing at, Brian?" Marcello shouted, desperation spilling from every word. The questions burned in his throat, wanting answers and resolution. "Do you really think you're the good guy, Marcello?" Brian shot back, his grin tightening. The shadows danced around them as the officers formed a line, unsure of who to trust. "Look at you. You think you built this empire alone? I taught you everything you know." Amid the chaos, David stood firm beside Marcello. "This needs to end now," he yelled, determination lifting his voice above the din. But just then, a loud crash echoed from the back of the warehouse, drawing everyone's attention for a split second. Dust settled, and the tension shifted. Suddenly, a familiar figure stumbled through the debris. Kyle, the tech wizard. But something about him was off. His jacket was torn, hair wild. A manic expression twisted his features. "Marcello, I tried to warn." "You," he shouted, glancing around as if expecting someone to follow. "Warn me?" Marcello's grip tightened on Isabella, inching backward. "What did you find?" But before Kyle could reply, his hands flew up, revealing a small object glimmering in the sparse light, a flash drive. "This has everything, the real proof, everything Alan and Brian are hiding." A swirl of disbelief flooded Marcello's veins. "What do you mean, everything? What else do they have?" "It took me time. But I cracked in. It leads to documents, transactions." Kyle's voice trembled, urgency flooding his words. But then something shifted in him. His expression shifted to one of sheer panic. "No!" he cried out, looking over Marcello's shoulder. "You shouldn't be here. You must go." Before Marcello could question him, a figure stepped out from the shadows. A woman, dressed in dark clothes, her face covered, glowering at them. "Like moths to a flame," she hissed, voice skeletal, deathly calm. "You dug up things that should remain buried." "Who are you?" Marcello demanded, defensive. But at that moment, the woman flicked her wrist, and the ground trembled. A hum filled the air, vibrating through their bodies, paralyzing everyone except her. "I'm someone who knows the truth about every last one of you." Then, shockingly, she turned the gun on Brian, her voice turning to ice. "And you, dear brother." Marcello's heart sank. The betrayal in Brian's eyes switched to pure fear as he realized. This woman was someone from his past, a ghost. Yet before any of them could react, she pulled the trigger. But it didn't end in gunfire. Instead, The impact released a flash, blinding them all. As the dust cleared, everything felt different. Marcello gasped. Something was wrong. The world twisted, the shadows shifting oddly. His family, the brother he'd thought lost, the bond tainted by betrayal, everything fractured. Before Marcello could fully grasp the change, David's voice pierced through the fog. What did she mean by the truth? What truth? One look at Kyle and Brian revealed horror etched across their faces. No one had the answers. Only the chilling echo of unfinished conversations hung heavy in the air. As they staggered back, breaths shallow with uncertainty, Marcello realized they were standing on the edge of a void, where familial ties twisted into something dark, a truth that threatened to consume them all. What dark secret had Brian been hiding? What did the woman want? More importantly, how far would Marcello go to protect his little girl from the abyss looming ever closer? His heart raced, and questions churned in his mind like storm clouds. Where did the path lead from here? The room spun, smoke curling in the stale air as they stumbled backward from the shock of her appearance. Marcello struggled to make sense of it all. The woman with the gun, who was she? What truth about them could she possibly know? Brian's face turned ghostly pale, terror piercing through his bravado. "What do you want?" he stammered, his voice unsteady. "I want the truth," she replied, her voice cutting through the smoke like a knife. "All of it." Then, in an instant, the ground shook again. The sound ripped through the air. A deafening explosion echoed from somewhere deep in the warehouse. The very foundation trembled, sending dust and debris flying like shrapnel. Marcello shielded Isabella with his body, heart racing, a lump rising in his throat as everything around them seemed to disintegrate. "All of you," the woman shouted over the din, "you've played a dangerous game. You brought this on yourselves." In that moment, as the dust settled and confusion reigned, something emerged from behind her, a figure cloaked in shadows. A man, tall and broad-shouldered, stepped into the dim light, his face half hidden beneath a hood. Marcello squinted, trying to see clearer. Then the figure pulled back the hood, revealing deep-set eyes, lost but familiar. "Jason?" Marcello gasped, recognition dawning with horror. This was his childhood friend, the one who had been with him when life was raw and harsh, but who had disappeared into the dark web of the city's underbelly years ago. "What are you doing here?" "I'm here for you, Mark," Jason responded, his voice calm but strained as chaos swirled around them. "To expose the truth that burns through this town." "What truth?" Marcello demanded. "You remember everything we went through. We had dreams. Dreams shattered by your rise," Jason shot back, anger flickering in his gaze. "You traded your soul for success." Then, with a speed that caught everyone off guard, he lunged at the woman. It was a moment of pure chaos, fists flying in a blur, and in an instant, she fell back, disarming him with a swift motion. Guns skidded across the floor, and Marcello's heart pounded like thunder. "Stop it!" Marcello screamed, panic rising in his chest. And just then, everything spiraled out of control. Amid the tumult, Kyle, still on the ground, suddenly erupted. "Wait! Everyone, stop!" he shouted, his voice cracking. "It's bigger than any of us could have imagined." Eyes shifted sharply toward him. The air hung heavy with tension. "What do you mean?" Marcello asked, weaving through the chaos, his heart racing. I hacked into everything, Kyle gasped, desperation painting his features. Not just Alan's games. I found the connections. It leads to someone at the very top. Someone you trusted, Marcello. What? Who? Marcello barked, the chill creeping down his spine. Your father. The world seemed to halt. The truth crashed into him like a tidal wave. Marcello's breath caught in his throat. What do you mean? Years ago, he made deals with people who sought power. This all ties back to him. Your rise, the shady dealings. It was never just about you. No. Marcello shook his head, disbelief rippling through him. That's not possible. He's the puppet master, Kyle insisted, eyes wild. You've been walking in his shadow without knowing it. A pawn in a game you didn't choose. Shock coursed through Marcello's veins, shattering everything he thought he knew. Anger bubbled, raged inside him. But that rage turned into something else. Fear. What if it was true? What if everything was a lie? Isabella's small hand squeezed his tightly. Daddy, she whispered, looking at him with wide, innocent eyes. Her trust crushed his heart. He had to protect her from the darkness closing in. But now, the shifting sands beneath him felt treacherous. The room hummed with uncertainty and dread. Brian's expression had morphed into panic, realizing his own position hung in the balance. The pieces of this twisted puzzle began to dissolve around him. Who could he trust now? As they stood at the edge of revelation, uncertain of their next move, the void finally beckoned. The truth waiting to consume them all. Would Marcello be strong enough to confront the darkness hiding in his past? Or would he, too, be swallowed whole? As they stood there, the weight of the revelation hung in the air, suffocating and heavy. Marcello's mind raced, trying to wrap itself around this new reality. His father, the man who had always seemed larger than life, was somehow intertwined in this web of deceit. Anger, betrayal, and fear twisted within him as he sought to process the implications. Your father? Brian echoed, disbelief etched across his face. He was never what you thought. But before Marcello could respond, a crackle of energy surged through the air, a sudden shift in the atmosphere. The hum from moments ago transformed into a deafening roar. The ground beneath their feet trembled violently. What's happening? Kyle shouted, panic edging his voice. No idea, Marcello replied, gripping Isabella tighter as dust swirled in the chaotic air. And then a blinding flash erupted in the corner of the room, a blast that sent everyone reeling back. Time slowed in that moment, fragments of chaos suspended in air like shattered glass. As the dust settled, a chilling silence enveloped them. When Marcello's vision cleared, something unfathomable loomed before them. Standing within the fractured walls of the warehouse was a group, an assembly of figures clad in dark tactical gear, faces obscured under masks. They moved with precision, weapons at the ready, like specters unveiled from a nightmare. Everyone down, shouted one of the masked figures. And instinctively, Marcello's group hit the ground. Adrenaline coursed through Marcello's veins. His heart thudded. Who are these people? He hurriedly shielded Isabella with his body, forcing her against the concrete floor. Get them! Another commanded, urgency slicing through the air. The masked team surged toward them, and Marcello's instincts kicked in. We need to fight back, he yelled, scrambling to his feet. But before he could make a move, one figure approached, a glimmer of recognition flickering within Marcello. "No, it can't be," he gasped. The lead figure peeled back the mask, revealing the familiar face of Elena, his childhood friend, whom he thought had disappeared years ago amid the chaos of his own rise to power. "Elena?" His voice barely escaped his lips. Shock swept over him, raw and electric. "Marcello," she breathed, urgency mingling with compassion. "We don't have time. You need to come with us, now." "Why? What's going on?" Confusion danced in his mind as fear clamped tight around his chest. "I'll explain everything, but it's bigger than you think. You're in grave danger." Her eyes darted towards the shadows, as if sensing the chaos closing in. "This is about your father. He's not just a businessman. He's part of something much worse. You have to trust me." Something in her tone gripped him, suspended in a mix of trust and doubt. "Elena, after all this, how can I trust anyone?" But before she could respond, a fierce explosion erupted from the back of the warehouse, blowing debris and smoke into the air. Marcello watched helplessly as the group tumbled toward the entrance, but he caught sight of Brian, fear twisted on his face too. "My brother." Brian stumbled back, his voice cracking. "He's been involved." The walls around them began to shift, the truth collapsing in on themselves like a house of cards. In that moment, everything he thought he understood unraveled. The foundation of his life, built on loyalty, family ties, and hard-earned respect, was no longer solid. "Elena, what are we dealing with?" Marcello stammered, panic singing in his bloodstream. Before she could reply, another blast rocked the building, and the lights flickered ominously. Shadows danced chaotically, mingling with the dust-heavy air. In that instant, everything shifted. Fear morphed into sheer dread. As reality began to collapse around them, Marcello felt a chilling certainty wash over him. Who had he become? What darkness had he unwittingly stepped into? And as the truth spiraled ever deeper, he couldn't shake the feeling that the very people he'd fought to protect were now lying at the heart of a treacherous game. "Marcello, we need to go, now!" Elena grabbed his arm, her desperation pulling him toward the exit. But as they ran, a single, biting thought gripped him hard. If everything was a lie, then who could he trust? As they sprinted toward the exit, the warehouse shook again, and Marcello felt dread pooling in his stomach. "This isn't right, Elena," he shouted, casting a frantic glance behind him. The looming figures and gunfire were closing in, but he had to keep Isabella safe. "Elena, who are they?" he cried, urgency thickening his voice. "Friends, or maybe not," she gasped, pulling him out through a crumbling doorway. But before they could break free, a figure emerged from the shadows, blocking their path. "What are you doing, Elena?" The figure thundered, voice low and dangerous. It was a man dressed in tactical gear, his face obscured, but the anger radiating from him felt painfully familiar. "Elena, you know him?" Marcello couldn't help but ask, his heart racing. "It's not what you think," Elena shouted back, panic rising. But then, with a speed that caught them off guard, the man lunged forward, grabbing Elena by the arm. "You've got to be kidding," he barked, pulling her close. You think you can just run off with this guy? After everything we've done? Let her go, Marcello yelled, stepping in front of Isabella, prepared to fight. Fool, the man spat. You don't understand. We have no choice. They're coming for all of us. It was then that a sudden realization flooded Marcello's mind, cold and unsettling. What do you mean, we have no choice? He demanded, anger and fear twisting in his gut. Elena trembled, the fight leaving her. Marcello, I didn't want you to find out like this, she whispered, tears welling in her eyes. Find out what? He pressed, dread clinging to his skin like a heavy fog. And then it hit him, the unguarded look on her face, the unsaid words dancing between them. Elena, what are you hiding? Before she could answer, the ground trembled again, and dust cascaded from the ceiling. The masked man glanced back, and in that moment of distraction, Elena pulled away, revealing a glimmering object in her hand, a small, rectangular device. Don't, he shouted, as she pressed a red button. Lights flickered, and an alarm blared to life, filling the warehouse with a cacophony of chaos. Run, she screamed, a mixture of determination and fear. But just as they turned, another masked figure stormed in, this one holding a gun. Stop! The command cut through the chaos. And then, shockingly, the masked figure lifted their visor, revealing a face Marcello once loved fiercely, his mother. What are you doing here, Mom? He gasped, disbelief coursing through him. You shouldn't be... Marcello, listen, she interrupted, urgency flooding her tone. You're in over your head. Your father, he set you up. His world spun. Set me up? What do you mean? Memories flashed through his mind. Memories of family dinners, celebrations, a life he thought he understood. But it all felt tainted, twisted. But as she spoke, the darkness crept in once more. The warehouse erupted in noise and chaos, shots ringing out, voices rising in panic. Then, with raw intensity, his mother revealed the truth that shattered everything. Marcello, the truth is, I've been working with Elena all along. We're part of this too. It's a family operation. Time stopped. Shock held him in place. His mother, N. Accomplice? Everything, every trust, teetered on a knife's edge. Run, she shouted again, desperation cutting through. But Marcello's heart raced, not just for survival, but for every shattered connection. How deep did this betrayal run? What did it mean for him, for Isabella, for everything he stood for? Mom, he shouted, but as they turned to flee, the explosion of truth hung heavy in the air. The darkness was rising, and it swirled around them. Each heartbeat, a countdown. Who to trust now? What was real, and where would they go? Everything they thought they knew was about to collide with a reality that would change them forever. As they dashed out of the crumbling warehouse, Marcello's mind was engulfed in turmoil. The family he once knew, perhaps, was lost in shadows, and the danger was far from over. As they dashed out of the crumbling warehouse, Marcello's heart raced, a wild storm of panic fueling each desperate step. Dust swirled in the fading light, and behind him, the chaos erupted like thunder. The tense cries of officers blended with the cacophony of gunfire, echoing in the fast-approaching twilight. "Keep going," he shouted to his mother and Elena, his grip tight around Isabella, who clung to him, her small face pale with fear. "Elena, just tell me the truth," he demanded, urgency pushing every word. What are we up against? But just then, the lights overhead flickered ominously, and suddenly, the ground beneath them trembled again. A low rumble shook the very walls of the warehouse, and the sound turned into a deafening roar, shaking Marcello to his core. Before he could process what was happening, the walls buckled. A loud crash, and the whole structure began collapsing around them, as if the universe decided to swallow them whole. "Out! Go!" his mother screamed, lunging for the crumbling door. But in a split second, everything changed. A blinding flash lit the air, bright enough to sting their eyes. Marcello shielded Isabella, twisting to protect her from the chaos, when something heavy slammed into his back, sending him tumbling forward. Just as a scream pierced the air, an explosion erupted from above, raining debris like shards of glass. In that moment of horror, Marcello instinctively reached for Isabella, only to find nothing. Panic clawed at him as he whipped his head around. "Isabella!" he cried, the air thick with fear. But there was no response, only the thick dust filling his lungs and a harrowing silence. It felt as if time slowed. The tension hung heavy around him, suffocating. He spotted his mother, desperately searching the wreckage. "Where is she?" she gasped. But he barely heard her. The world blurred, panic rushing into every crevice of his mind. "Elena!" he shouted, but she was lost in the chaos, darting between shadows, while his heart hammered against his ribs. And then it hit him, like a blow to the chest. There was a figure amidst the wreckage, rising slowly. It was Brian, bloodied but defiantly standing. "You need to listen to me!" he yelled above the noise. But Marcello didn't want to hear it. Not now. Suddenly, something surged within him, a desperate urge to protect his family. "Isabella!" he cried again, voice tinged with panic. Then, from the corner of his eye, Marcello saw her, distant but alive. The relief flooded him, but it was short-lived. Brian reached out, panic etched in his face. "Marcello, your father, he isn't just a businessman. He's tied to people who don't just want power. They want to wipe us out. You're in danger." Before Marcello could comprehend the words, an intense shot rang out, followed by a sickening silence. Marcello turned just in time to see his mother stagger back, her hand clutching her chest. "Mom!" he screamed, instinctively moving toward her. But she looked at him with a pained smile, something heavy in her gaze. "Marcello, The world froze around him. Everything he thought he knew shattered with those words hanging in the air. "Mom, no!" He rushed to her side, but as he fell to his knees, a sudden roar ignited the night. "Run!" Elena shouted, pulling Marcello away. But something deep inside him cracked, a realization that sent chills racing down his spine. The masked figures moved like shadows, surrounding his mother. "We're sorry, but it had to be done," one of them shouted, fear twisting his features. "We couldn't let her keep talking." "Keep talking about what?" Marcello's voice wavered, the truth clawing at his mind with claws of ice. His mother had been keeping secrets all along. Whispers of betrayal echoed in his ears. As his mother's eyes lost their light, Marcello felt something deep within him shift. The ground felt unsteady, the world collapsing in on itself. The deeper truth unveiled itself, one that shook the foundation of every relationship he held dear. "Marcello," she murmured, and then her breath stilled. A gaping void opened in his chest, an emptiness so profound It swallowed everything else whole. Everything had changed. The alliance that had seemed so clear, his family, his life, everything, now felt like a fragile house built on sand. In that instant, the pieces of his life shattered around him, revealing a darkness he had never anticipated. And with that darkness came the gnawing question: what had he become? Who could he trust now? As shadows closed in around him, Marcello felt like he was standing on the edge of a yawning chasm, every instinct screaming to run. But where could he go when everything he believed was now harrowing illusion? In the silence, he heard the haunting echo of betrayal breathe against his spine, and for a heartbeat, nothing but doubt lingered in the chilling air. As he fell to his knees, everything inside Marcello felt hollow. Panic paralyzed him. His mother lay there, breathless, a subtle smile fading from her face. "Mom!" he choked out, and as he leaned over her, hoping, praying for a miracle, the world around him dissolved into chaos. Elena pulled him back, yelling for him to run, but he couldn't leave. Not when she needed him. "Marcello, we have to go now," she urged, dragging him back towards the entrance. But just then, the ground shook violently again, and the walls trembled, dust raining from the ceiling. In that moment of distraction, a shadow loomed behind Elena, a dark figure emerging from the chaos. A gunshot rang out, startling them all. Another scream shattered the heavy air. Marcello turned just in time to see Elena stagger back, clutching her shoulder, her face contorted in pain. "No!" he shouted, instinct kicking in as he rushed toward her. "Elena!" He reached her side, feeling helpless as she sank to the ground. But before he could lift her, confusion surged through the throng around them. The masked figures seemed to retreat, hesitating, glancing nervously at one another. "Why are you doing this?" Marcello shouted in desperation, his heart racing. But just then, the figure in the shadows stepped forward. It was a woman, her face barely illuminated by the faint light flickering overhead. "You need to understand, none of this was meant to happen," she intoned, with a calm that sent chills through the room. "Who are you?" Marcello gasped, dread tightening around his throat. She lifted her chin. "I'm the one who could have saved you all. But secrets run deep in this family." With that, she tossed something at Marcello's feet, a small, tattered envelope that slid into his line of sight. His breath caught as he picked it up, realization dawning as he recognized the handwriting. It was unmistakably his father's. Then, as if the universe wanted to pull him deeper, the woman continued, "Your father, he was trying to protect you from me, but he trusted the wrong people." "Protect me? From what?" Marcello shouted, panic turning to anger. She stepped closer, urgency in her voice. "The truth about your mother's past, you don't know the half of it." But before she could explain, the sound of sirens echoed outside, growing closer. "Time's up," she said, her eyes darting to the entrance as she turned to leave. "You think you know the people in your life? Check again. Trust no one." In a flash, she was gone, melting into the shadows, and Marcello's heart sank. Confusion wrapped around him, his mind racing. What did she mean? Trust no one? "Marcello!" Elena's voice pulled him back. He looked down to see her still on the floor, distress written across her features. "I didn't want you to find out like this. You need to know." "What?" he pressed, desperate for clarity. But then, in a shocking twist, Isabella's small voice broke through the chaos. "Daddy?" He turned, and there she was, a few feet away, standing beside a tall man he would never have expected, a stranger in a suit. "Who are you? What are you doing with my daughter?" Marcello's voice was fierce, the protective instinct surfacing like fire. "Calm down." The tall man raised his hands, glancing at Isabella as if he cared, but his eyes told another story. "I'm here to get her to safety. Your father sent me." Shock hit him like a train. "My father?" "Yes," the man said, nodding urgently. "He's been watching. He knows everything." Time slowed. All the tension, all the deception bordered on madness now. Marcello's mind raced. How could he trust this man? How could he believe anything anymore? The connections tangled around his heart like a tight fist. And just as the sirens wailed louder, drowning out his swirling thoughts, another explosion rocked the warehouse. Dust and debris swirled, catching chance glimmers of fading light. "Run!" the man shouted, taking Isabella's hand, but Marcello planted himself in front of them, still struggling to digest the shocking reality. "We're leaving now." The urgency in the man's voice became more intense. But as they hesitated, Marcello's gaze locked onto his mother's lifeless body on the floor, the echoes of love and betrayal reverberating through his heart. "Choose, Marcello." The man's eyes bore into him, everything about him sharp, demanding. But Marcello felt the weight of betrayal swirling. He couldn't just abandon his mother like this, could he? Everything spun around him, layered in layers of darkness and light. Doubt clawed at his heart like a wild thing. "Marcello!" Elena shouted again, pulling him back to the living world. And in that single moment, he knew he stood at a crossroads. Trust was a fragile construct, like glass before the tempest. As the chaos simmered around him, he was left with one haunting question. Whose side was he really on? The air crackled with uncertainty, and as the sirens drew closer, the choices grew ever more complicated. Would he follow that tall stranger or stay among the wreckage of his past? The darkness whispered in the shadows, tempting him to make the irrevocable leap into the unknown. As they teetered on the edge of chaos, Marcello felt the jagged weight of uncertainty wrapping around him. The stranger stood there, hand extended toward Isabella, a lifeline in a storm. But every instinct screamed that trusting him could unlock a door to even more danger. "Marcello!" Elena's voice cut through his turmoil, snapping him back. He had to decide. "We need to go now." Panic clawed at him as sirens drew close, curling his heart. The decision felt like a knife, slicing through everything he once believed. Behind him, Brian's panic-filled eyes mirrored his own. "Isabella!" He couldn't move. Each second felt like an eternity. But when he looked back at her, she was gripping the tall man's hand, trust shimmering in her innocent eyes. Marcello felt something break inside him. "Just a moment," he pleaded, unable to tear himself from this moment. "You need to explain." Now his heart raced. As if on cue, the ground suddenly rumbled, again. Not just the tremors of chaos, but something deeper, something threatening to shake apart the very core of their world. "Here they come," the stranger shouted, pulling Isabella closer, urgency flooding his. And then, in a shocking turn, an ear-splitting explosion rocked the building, sending a shockwave that slammed everyone against the wall. Dust clouded their vision, choking cries echoed, and the air filled with panic. Marcello shielded Isabella, and shock gripped him. He blinked against the debris settling like snow, heart racing. And then came a voice. "Breathe, you're safe now." It was a woman, stepping straight through the haze, a figure he'd thought was lost forever. "Laura?" Marcello whispered, disbelief crashing over him. This was his sister, the sister taken from him years ago, the sister whose absence carved a canyon in his heart. "Marcello, we need to go," she shouted, her face taut with urgency. Shock morphed into confusion as memories collided. "I'll explain everything." "What are you doing here? How? You were gone." Desperate hope flickered in him, but dread coiled in his chest like a snake. Shadows closed in, sirens drawing near. "No time," Lara said, grabbing Isabella and pulling her close. "I'm here to protect you, all of you." Marcello's head spun. Nothing was clear. Protect us from what? We're already in danger. It was like a punch to the gut, the reality of their situation only deepening. But then, right when he thought it couldn't twist any further, the man released Isabella's hand, letting go too easily. He stepped forward, anger sparking in his eyes. "It's all a trap." "What?" Marcello's voice filled with disbelief as the man spun toward Lara, amid the dust-shrouded chaos. Suddenly, everything became so real, so dark. "She's part of it," he shouted, pointing at his sister, the betrayal lacerating the air. "You're all pawns. You think she's trying to help you?" Time froze. Marcello's heart raced. "What do you mean?" He faced Lara, searching for a flicker of honesty in her eyes. "I had no choice. I had to play my part," she fought back, desperation etching her words. "You don't understand." But before she could finish, the ground shook again, this time more violently, and in a furious burst of sound, the masked figures stormed in from the shattered entrance. A gun went off, ringing in Marcello's ears. Chaos erupted as dueling voices filled the air. Everyone shouting, trying to make sense of the madness. Confusion gripped his mind. Was she betraying him? Or was everything else a lie? Torn between fear and familial ties, he watched as Lara shifted, vulnerability briefly flashing across her face, revealing the enormity of the situation. The world around him spun, and Marcello realized they were in the eye of a storm, with one small truth threatening to shatter everything he thought he knew. This family, his family, was made of secrets deeper than the night. And just as he braced for the worst, there was a flash of recognition in Lara's eyes, a hint of something sinister. "No!" The air caught in Marcello's throat as the last remnants of clarity washed away, revealing a piece of darkness he never expected. His heart raced with the dawning realization. Could it be? The very person he had yearned to reunite with. Was she alive only to destroy him? The shrillness of the gunfire faded as doubt surged, and as Lara's gaze shifted, he saw something shift in her expression. A flicker of triumph, hidden even amid the chaos. And in that gut-wrenching moment, everything he thought was true shattered. Like glass breaking against stone, leaving him reeling, desperately wanting to uncover the truth. Who could he trust when everything turned inside out? The world moved around him, but he felt frozen, teetering on the precipice of betrayal and hope, uncertain where to step next. As the dust settled, Marcello felt his heart race. He stood frozen, with the weight of secrets bearing down on him. Laura's once familiar face now appeared twisted by shadows, and the stranger's angry shout echoed in his mind. "You're all pawns." An overwhelming urge to run kicked in, but his feet refused to move. "This can't be happening," he shouted, glancing at Isabella, whose innocent eyes watched the unraveling chaos. "Stay close, Izzy." Gunfire echoed louder, and the masked figures surged forward, eyes scanning for their targets. Elena groaned by the entrance, clutching her wound, still fighting to catch her breath. "Marcello, we can't fight them all." "Believe me, I'm not going down," seemed lost forever in murky waters. In that moment, the floor vibrated under their feet, the urgency mounting. "Listen to me," Laura pleaded, her voice rising. "Your father made these deals to protect us. He never meant for it to come to this." "Protect us from what? From whom?" Marcello shouted, feeling the sharp edge of confusion slice through his mind. As the chaos reached a crescendo, Laura stepped forward, placing her hand on his shoulder. "I'll explain everything. But first, we must leave. This warehouse isn't safe anymore." Even amid the turmoil, Marcello's heart yearned for answers. "Are you really my sister? Or are you just another player in this twisted game?" But before she could respond, the lead masked figure charged forward, gun aimed. Without thinking, Marcello moved to block him, his body acting on instinct. "Get back!" he yelled. Elena pushed up from the ground, eyes blazing with defiance. "We are not pawns. We will not let them win. We fight!" Then, unexpectedly, a wave of reinforcements burst through the entrance. A group of officers, determined and resolute, charged in, justice arriving like a brewing storm. "Everyone down!" one officer shouted, as chaos erupted anew, the power shifting rapidly. It ignited hope in Marcello's heart. Had the tide turned? "Marcello, we have to go," Lara insisted, pulling him forward. She squeezed Isabella's hand tightly. "Stay close." The group rushed toward the exit, confusion melting into clarity. Marcello's heart raced as they weaved through the debris and chaos. Gunfire crackled behind them, but the promise of freedom fueled their desperation. One last glance back revealed Brian standing among the wreckage, his expression torn. A moment of hesitation passed between them, a silent recognition of shared blood, of choices that splintered their lives apart. "Marcello, don't forget us," Brian shouted, as they disappeared into the night. As they emerged outside, fresh air rushed over them, tinged with hope and uncertainty. The distant sirens echoed, growing louder. Marcello felt something inside him shift. The weight of betrayal lifted slightly, replaced by a burning need for the truth. "Marcello, what now?" Elena panted, her eyes bright with resolve. He looked back at Lara, at the remnants of everything he fought to protect. They were all survivors in this twisted game. "Now, we start over." With the city behind them, each heartbeat filled with potential, he held his family close, ready to uncover the layers of secrets yet hidden. But with darkness still lurking, who could he trust? Would they ever truly be free? You need to subscribe now. Don't wait even one more second. Smash that like button for the algorithm and show your support. Flood the comments with your reactions and theories about this wild ride. And share this video with at least 5 friends who need to experience this finale. This is the moment. Let's keep this story alive together.